People always assume the biggest family fights start with money, but this one began with a single envelope my sister tried to pretend didn't exist. When our mother passed, she acted like everything was already settled, like the house, the savings, and the small land plot were naturally hers. She spoke with this quiet confidence that made it sound final, almost rehearsed, and for a moment I wondered if maybe I had missed something. But the way she avoided looking at me told a different story. What she didn't know was that Mom's lawyer had called me the same morning she tried to explain how things were going to be. And the lawyer didn't just have answers, he had the full copy of the will she thought she could hide. So while she was busy rewriting the truth, I was sitting with the real version of it, trying to decide when to let her know the game was already over. If you've ever watched someone try to twist a situation to their advantage, stay with this story. The moment she realized her plan wasn't as perfect as she thought, ended up being the quietest, yet sharpest twist I've ever seen unfold. And if you want more true-to-life stories like this, the kind that feel like hearing it from a friend, you can stick around or leave a comment. It helps me know what you want to hear next. The story began long before the will ever surfaced, woven quietly into the way the family grew, around small assumptions and unspoken tension. The two sisters, Maya and Denise, had always moved through life on uneven ground. Maya, the younger one by 3 years, carried most of the routine responsibilities in the household as they grew up, not because anyone said she had to, but because she was the type who felt uncomfortable watching things fall apart. She was the one who woke early to help their mother prepare breakfast on school days, and she stayed up late to clean dishes on the nights their mother was too tired after long shifts. Denise, on the other hand, had a talent for floating above the daily mess. She could charm her way into easier tasks or slip out of doing them altogether, and because she had a bright, magnetic personality, people didn't always notice the imbalance right away. Their mother did, of course, but she was gentle about it, hoping time would naturally pull Denise into a more grounded way of living. As they grew older, those early habits shaped the rhythm of their adult lives. Maya stayed in the same town, built her routines around work, and visited their mother several times a week. She handled grocery runs, doctor appointments, bills, and anything that required a bit of patience or attention to detail. Denise moved to a nearby city, chasing opportunities and relationships that came and went. She visited when it was convenient and made big promises she rarely followed through on. But she always showed up on holidays, offering the kind of warmth that made people forget how absent she had been the rest of the year. Their mother, Evelyn, never treated either of them with favoritism. She simply accepted them as they were. But naturally, she relied more on the daughter who showed up consistently. When her health began to decline, that pattern only deepened. Maya learned everything about medications, appointments, and the small routines that helped keep her mother stable. Denise checked in by phone and posted supportive messages on social media, which made her seem present to everyone except the people who were actually in the house day after day. By the time their mother entered the hospital for the last time, Maya had already been carrying most of the emotional weight. She knew the end was coming, not because anyone said it directly, but because she could see it in the way her mother's voice softened, as if she had started letting go before her body caught up. During those last days, she stayed beside her bed, reading to her, adjusting her blankets, and talking about simple memories that held comfort. Denise arrived for a few hours, standing near the window with a sad smile, avoiding the harder conversations. It wasn't cruelty, it was discomfort, the kind of deep unease some people feel around endings. When their mother passed, the two sisters reacted in very different ways. Maya felt the grief in a slow, heavy wave, the type that pressed into the daily routine and made everything feel strangely quiet. Denise responded quickly, shifting into a kind of emotional efficiency, handling outward expressions of sorrow with the same ease she handled social interactions. She cried in public, hugged people, and reminded everyone how close she had been to their mother. Meanwhile, Maya was the one packing up the hospital room and speaking with the nurse who had cared for Evelyn the most. The will wasn't mentioned immediately. Their mother had always been private about her finances, never wanting to make her daughters feel pressured or entitled. But she did say, more than once, that she had everything arranged, and both daughters understood that the details would appear when they needed to. Maya assumed the will would reflect the balance of responsibility she had carried. In recent years, maybe the house or a portion of the savings, but she didn't dwell on it. Her mother had always been fair, And fairness wasn't something she worried about. The first sign of something strange came during the week after the funeral. Denise became unusually involved, appearing at the house early in the morning with coffee and wearing a tone of importance, as if she had been assigned to manage the aftermath. She wandered through the rooms, opening drawers like she was searching for paperwork, commenting on which items should be handled first. It wasn't the actions themselves that felt odd, it was the sudden intensity of her interest, especially from someone who usually kept her distance from anything tedious. Maya noticed it but didn't push back. Grief makes people act in unpredictable ways, and she assumed this was Denise's version of trying to be helpful. But the tone shifted one afternoon when Denise casually announced that their mother's assets were pretty straightforward. She explained that the house wasn't worth much, the savings were modest, and everything would be divided equally as expected. She spoke with such certainty that it made Maya pause. For someone who claimed to be dealing with grief, Denise seemed unusually informed about specific details she had never cared about before. And when Maya asked how she knew, Denise shrugged and said she had found the paperwork in their mother's bedroom. That was the moment the air shifted. Maya knew their mother kept important documents locked in a small safe behind her dresser, and the only person with the combination was the lawyer. If Denise had found something, it didn't come from their mother's room, not legally. Anyway, the timing was suspicious, and the way Denise guarded her bag that day added another layer to the unease. Maya began to wonder if her sister had come during the days she was arranging the funeral, going through drawers and closets without saying a word. The following morning, everything became clearer. The lawyer called Maya directly, offering his condolences and explaining that he needed to schedule a meeting to review the will. His voice was calm and steady, the kind of tone someone uses when they've done this many times before. But one thing he said stood out sharply. "I'll send you the certified copy," he told her. "The same one your sister asked about earlier. I assumed she had already informed you." Maya felt a stillness settle in her chest, the kind that appeared when something quietly shifted into place. Denise hadn't mentioned contacting the lawyer. She had only mentioned finding papers. And now there was a matching piece to that odd behavior, a detail that explained why she suddenly seemed so certain about what the will said. When the lawyer's envelope arrived, Maya didn't open it immediately. She placed it on the kitchen table and stood there for a moment, letting her thoughts settle. The house felt different, as if it were holding its breath. She knew her sister well enough to understand the pattern. When Denise believed she had control, she leaned into it. And if she had hidden the will or a version of it wasn't out of confusion or grief, it was a decision, calculated and purposeful. The certified copy arrived with the lawyer's letter, laid out clearly, without any of the ambiguity Denise had hinted at. The will didn't divide everything evenly. Their mother had left the house and the small land plot to Maya specifically, acknowledging her care, consistency, and presence in the last years of her life. Other assets were divided between them equally, but the core of their mother's legacy, the part tied to home and memory, was entrusted to the daughter who had carried the everyday weight. Reading it didn't bring a sense of triumph. It brought a quiet heaviness, as if the truth itself required careful handling. It also sharpened the realization that Denise had been counting on something very different, and she had taken steps to steer things her way before Maya had even seen the real document. The shift was subtle but unmistakable. This wasn't simply a misunderstanding. This was the first sign of a conflict that hadn't fully surfaced yet. And for the first time, Maya understood that her sister had crossed a line she couldn't ignore. The weeks that followed felt like walking through a house where every door was half open, hinting at things no one wanted to face. Claire acted as if nothing unusual had happened, going about Sunday lunch the same way she always did, bringing the same casserole Mom used to praise, speaking in that calm, polite voice of hers. But Olivia noticed the way she avoided eye contact whenever the will was mentioned, in even the subtlest way. She noticed the little pauses, the small slips, and the growing discomfort that seemed to hang around Claire like humidity in the air. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was just there, quietly shaping every interaction between them. And the more Olivia watched, the more convinced she became that her sister wasn't acting out of ignorance or confusion. Claire knew exactly what she had done, and she hoped the silence would cover it. But silence wasn't going to hold forever. Olivia didn't confront her right away. She didn't want to start a fight without knowing the full picture. Instead, she focused on gathering little bits of truth, talking to neighbors who had helped their mom recently, asking small questions about who handled what, paying attention to what seemed different. She found out their mom had talked a lot about the house in the last months. How she wanted it to go to Olivia because she needed stability more than Claire did. She heard from another neighbor that Claire had visited Mom's place the day after the funeral, a detail that seemed harmless at first, but slowly connected itself to bigger pieces of the puzzle, like the missing papers, the disorganized drawers, and Claire's insistence that Mom didn't leave clear instructions. None of it fit together naturally, and Olivia felt the tension building, not in a cinematic way, but the steady kind that makes you step back and look at someone you've known your whole life and wonder if there's a version of them you never really saw. Things shifted when the lawyer called Olivia again, this time asking if she had already talked to her sister about the certified copy. The question wasn't aggressive. He sounded almost cautious, like someone who had seen family disputes get worse than they needed to be. Olivia told him she hadn't. He sighed, then explained that the original should have been in their mother's fireproof box. The same box Claire claimed she couldn't find the key to. Hearing that felt like another door clicking open. It wasn't a big revelation. It was simple, almost mundane, but it made something inside Olivia settle into certainty. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a choice Claire had made, probably believing no one would check, no one would question her, and no one would have any proof. She must have assumed the lawyer didn't keep a digital record. She must have hoped everyone would trust her version of events. And maybe they would have, if Olivia hadn't asked for the copy in the first place. The real conflict started one evening when Olivia went to Mom's house to clean out the living room. She didn't expect Claire to show up uninvited, but she walked in without knocking, carrying a box of files and acting as if she had every right to go through whatever she wanted. Olivia watched her for a moment, seeing how familiar the movements were, how practiced Claire seemed at taking charge. It wasn't new. Claire had always been the responsible one, the organized one, the sister everyone looked to for decisions. Maybe that was why she felt entitled to handle the will her own way. But entitlement didn't erase the truth. Claire began suggesting which things should be donated or stored, speaking with the confidence of someone who believed she still controlled the entire process. Olivia let her talk until she reached for the drawer where Mom used to keep important papers. That was when Olivia's patience quietly snapped. She told Claire she already knew about the will. Not the vague version Claire had tried to feed her before, but the real one, the full, certified copy with clear instructions and their mother's unmistakable signature. The reaction wasn't explosive. Claire went still, her hand hovering above the drawer handle. It took a few seconds for her to turn around, and when she did, she didn't look angry or defensive. She looked caught, like someone trying to decide whether to deny, explain, or pretend it was all a misunderstanding. Her voice came out softer than usual when she said, "Mom, didn't he mean for things to get complicated?" But that wasn't an explanation. It was an excuse, and Olivia felt the weight of it land heavily in her chest. The conversation that followed wasn't loud, but it was exhausting. Claire tried to weave her actions into something noble, insisting she only wanted to protect the family, saying the house was too much responsibility for Olivia, reminding her that she was single, still renting, and had changed jobs twice in the last year. She spoke like she was doing Olivia a favor, like she had the authority to decide what their mother really meant, and maybe she believed that. Maybe she had convinced herself that she was the better choice, the one who knew what to do, the one Mom would have trusted more. But every sentence made it clearer that Claire didn't see her as an equal. She saw her as someone who couldn't possibly handle something so important, and that hurt more than the hidden will itself. The tension rose when Claire said she had already spoken to a realtor, just in case. Olivia stared at her, realizing how far her sister had gone before even giving her a chance to understand the situation. Claire didn't just hide the will. She had moved forward as if Olivia didn't matter at all. It wasn't malicious in a dramatic sense. It was more like a quiet dismissal of belief that Olivia wouldn't notice, wouldn't ask, wouldn't push back. And that quiet kind of betrayal can feel sharper than anything shouted in a fight. The climax came in the form of a simple decision. Olivia told Claire she was taking the will to probate court, no matter how uncomfortable or messy it became. She wasn't trying to punish her sister. She just wanted the truth to stand, the way their mother intended. Claire tried one last time to stop her, reminding her that court would create a permanent rift, that people would talk, that once things became official, there was no turning back. But Olivia had reached a point where staying silent felt like losing a part of herself, her voice, her confidence, her sense of fairness. So she stood her ground. Not dramatically. Not with anger. just with a calm, steady certainty that surprised even her. As soon as Claire realized Olivia wouldn't back down, something in her broke, her shoulders dropped, her expression shifted, and for the first time since their mother passed, Claire looked less like the confident older sister and more like someone who had made a choice she couldn't undo. She didn't apologize, not fully. She didn't confess every detail, but she didn't fight anymore. She left Mom's house quietly, carrying the same box she brought in, but with a kind of heaviness that hadn't been there before, and Olivia stayed behind, sitting in the living room surrounded by half-sorted belongings, feeling a mix of sadness, anger, and relief. It wasn't victory. It wasn't revenge. It was simply the moment when everything became clear. That night, Olivia realized the real conflict wasn't just about the will. It was about years of being underestimated, about the way Claire had always taken the lead, about how easy it had been for her to believe she could shape the future without asking anyone else. The hidden will was just the final push, the action that made all those unspoken truths rise to the surface. And now that they were out in the open, nothing between them would ever be the same again. In the days after confronting Claire, Olivia moved with a quiet determination she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't the vengeful energy people imagine when they hear the word revenge. It was more grounded than that, almost practical. She wasn't interested in hurting her sister or embarrassing her. She just wanted to restore what was supposed to be hers and make sure their mother's intentions weren't brushed aside. Her plan wasn't dramatic. It simply involved following through, step by step, even when her hands felt shaky, and her mind wandered back to the arguments they used to have as kids. She gathered documents, met with the lawyer, and asked for clear explanations so she wouldn't feel lost halfway through the process. And each time she walked out of the lawyer's office, she felt herself gaining a little more confidence, like she was finally stepping into a role she hadn't believed she deserved before. The legal process took time, but not as long as she expected. The lawyer explained what probate court would require, how the certified copy held as much weight as the original, and how the judge would handle disputes if Claire tried to challenge anything. Olivia listened carefully, taking notes even when she already understood, because the act of writing things down made her feel grounded. The lawyer treated her with respect, never assuming she was confused or incapable, which felt refreshing after weeks of dealing with Claire's subtle condescension. He reminded her that following her mother's wishes wasn't selfish. It was an act of honor. That idea stayed with her, not because she needed validation, but because it made the whole situation feel less like a messy family argument and more like fulfilling a responsibility she didn't choose, but accepted. Claire didn't contact her during those early steps, which surprised Olivia at first. She expected resistance or negotiation, maybe even an emotional plea about keeping things simple. But the silence stretched on. It wasn't peaceful. It felt like a space Claire was using to rethink everything. Olivia tried not to imagine her sister pacing her kitchen or talking to her husband about how things had slipped out of her hands. She tried not to picture the embarrassment Claire might feel. It wasn't her job to soothe that. She stayed focused, reminding herself that she wasn't the one who created the conflict. She was just choosing not to be erased from her own family's story. When the court date was set, Olivia drove to the house one last time before the hearing. She wanted to go through the rooms again, not for evidence but for closure. She walked through the quiet kitchen, touched the edge of the dining table, where her mother used to sit with her tea, and spent a moment looking out the living room window at the small garden her mom had cared for, even during her hardest days. None of it made her emotional in a dramatic way, but she felt a steady warmth. The kind that comes when you're redoing something difficult because it aligns with what's right. She said a few words out loud. Not a speech, just a soft acknowledgement that she hoped her mom would understand the choices she was making. The hearing itself was straightforward. The judge reviewed the will, asked a few basic questions, and confirmed that the certified copy was valid. Claire attended, dressed neatly, her posture stiff, her expression carefully neutral. She didn't argue the legitimacy of the will. She only mentioned that she wanted fairness, a word that made Olivia tighten her jaw because fairness had been absent from this situation long before lawyers got involved. The judge made his decision calmly, reading it aloud without any dramatic pauses. The house was officially awarded to Olivia, exactly as their mother intended. Claire nodded once, almost politely, as if she had expected the outcome but hoped something might shift in her favor at the last moment. Outside the courtroom, Claire approached her. Not with anger, not with tears, but with an exhausted expression that made her look older than Olivia had ever seen her. She mentioned that she felt overshadowed for years, that she had been the responsible one, that she thought she knew better. It wasn't an apology, not fully, but it was the closest thing Claire could manage. Olivia listened without interrupting, letting the words settle. She realized her sister's actions didn't come from cruelty but from a mix of habit, insecurity, and control that had built up over years. Still, understanding didn't erase what happened. When Claire asked if they could move past it, Olivia told her gently that she needed time, not out of spite, but because trust doesn't snap back into place as easily as it breaks. The months after the court ruling were quieter. Olivia spent more time at the house, cleaning each room slowly, deciding what to keep and what to donate. The work wasn't glamorous or sentimental. It was just part of stepping into her new reality. She fixed a few things, called in a contractor when she discovered a leak under the sink, and learned small responsibilities she never bothered to pay attention to in her apartment. Each step made the place feel a little more like hers, even though her mother's presence still lingered in the details she hadn't changed yet. Sometimes she would catch herself reaching for her phone to send Claire a picture or ask a question, only to remember that things weren't back to normal. The absence of their usual conversations felt strange, but not unbearable. It simply marked a shift that needed space to breathe. Her version of revenge, if she could even call it that, wasn't dramatic. It came in the form of reclaiming what belonged to her, holding her ground even when it felt uncomfortable, and refusing to be dismissed the way she had been for years. It wasn't about making Claire regret anything. It was about proving to herself that she had a voice worth listening to, that she was capable of standing up even when the person she was confronting was someone she loved. And that kind of growth feels quiet but lasting. One unexpected moment happened when Claire stopped by the house months later. She didn't call ahead. She just showed up, holding a small box. Inside were a few things she found while sorting through her attic-old photos, a necklace their mother used to wear, and a handwritten note their mom had meant to give Olivia but never finished. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was the first sign that Claire understood she had crossed the line. They talked on the porch for a while, nothing heavy, just small updates about work, life, and neighbors. It wasn't a reconciliation, but it felt like the beginning of one. Olivia didn't forget what happened, but she also didn't want bitterness to shape the rest of their relationship. As months folded into a new kind of normal, Olivia realized the entire experience had changed her in a subtle but important way. She moved through decisions with more clarity, trusted her instincts more, and stopped assuming others knew better simply because they appeared more confident. She started taking on responsibilities at work she used to shy away from, noticing that she no longer felt the need to explain herself as much. She didn't become a completely different person. She just became a fuller version of herself, one who understood that strength doesn't always show up through loud declarations. Sometimes it shows up through quiet consistency. Claire and Olivia eventually found a steady rhythm again, not as perfect sisters, but as two adults learning how to respect each other in a new way. They didn't talk about the will anymore. That part of their history stayed where it belonged in the past, processed but not erased. What mattered more was the effort they both put into rebuilding something healthier, something based on honesty instead of assumptions. Looking back, Olivia didn't view the story as a dramatic family betrayal. She saw it as a turning point, a moment that forced her to step into her own life with more intention. The house became a place where she learned to trust herself, where she let go of the habit of staying quiet, and where she built a foundation not just of bricks and walls, but of confidence and awareness. It wasn't the kind of ending that comes with dramatic music or tearful reunions. It was the kind that unfolds slowly, like a real-life lesson settling into place. And in the quiet of her new home, she found something she didn't expect: peace. Not the kind that comes from everything going perfectly, but the kind that comes from knowing she chose the path that aligned with who she wanted to be: steady, honest, and no longer afraid to take up space in her own story.